Hey guys, this is Mr. Breen, and in this video I'll be talking about how bank lending is related to the money supply. Okay, let's say that somebody puts $100 in the bank. Now the supply of money in our little miniature economy here is $100. $100. Of course, we know that the bank's not just going to hold on to this money, they're going to actually lend some of it out. Let's say that this bank lends out 90% of all the money that's put into it. Now, they don't lend out 100% because then they don't have any money left, just in case somebody decides to come and take some of their money out of their account. Okay, so this bank lends 90% of it to somebody else. That guy spends the $90, which is 90% of $100. He spends his $90 on something, and then whoever sold him that thing puts that money in the bank. So now we have the original $100 that our first person had. Okay, this belongs to Starbuck. And then we have another $90 that whoever sold the harpoon now has. So now the money supply is not $100, but $190. Of course, 90% of that new $90 is also going to get lent out. So the money supply was now $190, but now the bank lends out 90% of the next $90, so that is $81, to another person. That person spends the money, and then wherever he spends the money, those people put the money in the bank, and the money supply is now $271. But of course, this $81 that is now in the bank is also going to get lent out. At least 90% of it is. So we had $271 in the bank, and then another 90% of $81 is going to get lent out, which happens to be $72.90. And that $72.90, when we add it in, is going to end up as $343.90. Now, of course, 90% of this $72.90 is going to get lent out and added to the money supply. Now, if we take this process on to infinity, that number is going to get a lot larger. I'm not going to go over the math to infinity, but I will show you the formula that we use to figure out exactly how much money is going to be added to the economy because of this $100 original deposit. The formula that we use is 100% divided by 100% minus how much is lent, or the percentage that is lent. In this case, it was 100% divided by 100% minus 90%, which, if you do all the math, comes out to 10. So we take 10 times the original amount, and that's going to end up as $1,000. We could also express this formula as 100% divided by how much they keep in reserve. In other words, how much they don't lend out. In this case, that was 100% divided by 10%, which gives us 10, which is exactly the same thing. So banks are actually required to hold on to some of the money that is deposited with them, and that amount is called the required reserve ratio, or RRR. Okay, so, and actually there's a little bit of a mistake here. It's not that the money supply will equal 1 divided by RRR, it's that the money supply will equal 1 divided by RRR times the amount of deposits. This, 1 divided by the required reserve ratio, that is the formula for the multiplier. The number that we multiply by the deposits to figure out how much the money supply is going to be. In this case, the multiplier was 10. I'll go into this in more depth later, but this leaves us with kind of a simple rule. If banks lend out more money, so let's say they only hold on to 5%, so they only hold on to 5%, that means the money multiplier goes to 20, so every $100 deposit creates a $2,000 increase in the money supply. But if they lend out less, so let's say they hold on to 20%, if they lend out less of the money, then the money supply will shrink. The main lesson here, bank lending increases the money supply, and when banks lend less, it decreases the money supply. Just to see how this works for yourself, I would recommend that you look up a couple different statistics and figure out what the multiplier is in the actual economy. If you look up the amount of United States currency exists, US currency, and divide the US money supply by that number, you'll find what the actual money multiplier is in the United States economy. As of the time of making this video, it's probably somewhere around 2.2.